Okay, the Contrarian Panel, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, is designed to take a look at everyday situations in a new light, to try to enhance our awareness of the choices that we're making, the decisions we're making, and hopefully help us make better choices and better decisions in the future. So that's the whole purpose of the Contrarian Panel. So the way this works is that I'm going to give you an exercise to do at your table. And then when we completed the exercise, I'm going to come back in true contrarian fashion to you, the audience, first, to get your perspectives. And realize there's no single right answer to these questions. What we're looking for here is a variety of perspectives so that we can gain greater awareness and a greater knowledge of the opportunities available to us in these particular situations. Okay, any questions on that? And then we'll go to the panelists for their feedback. Questions? Okay, so here's the exercise today. We're all familiar with the phrase playing by the rules, and we hear that fairly often. But what I don't hear is a discussion about whose rules. Whose rules are we talking about that we're playing by? So I want you at your tables to think both about your personal and your business relationships, and think about those situations in which you're willing to play by somebody else's rules, and those situations in which you insist upon playing by your own. All right? You're going to have a minute to do this.
It's my work day, they're only 5, they're up with your sweat.
But I just,
I have to step outside of that.
Some of you may not, but I've known you for decades.
Very true. To be able to actually serve them, yeah.
Booklet that was written by David Hawkins, and he said, you know, if you wrote something like this, I'd buy like 20 copies for my kids.
A lot of times.
Okay, if we can come back together again, please. If we can come back together, please. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, I know I'm excited to hear what you came up with in this regard. So, if you will, who would like to share what came out of your discussion at the table? Thad.
We had a great conversation. 3 of us work in very regulated, federal governmental regulated industries, and 2 of us have no rules whatsoever. And some of us love that no rule situation, but the ones that were heavily regulated by some book or something, they realize that allows them the opportunity to help their clients in creative ways, not to circumvent the regulations, but to help their clients in new and interesting ways that nobody had ever thought of. So that was kind of a way to help them get out of that regulated. Mary and I are just free-flowing hippie freaks, so.
Great. Any others? Other perspectives? John?
Actually, I was not in the discussion, but I'll come up with my own.
Okay.
I'm in a regulated industry, supposedly. I think it's a matter of when dealing with the clients, it's a matter of taking a look to see where creativity can come into play. Certain clients have different levels of what they're willing to do. I had one client that never itemized their tax deductions because they felt they would be audited, and they felt safer that way. Got other clients that take a look and say, okay, here's what the bottom line should be for tax purposes. So we take a look and obviously are guided by guidelines, but there's interpretations, and it's a matter of which interpretation you use.
Okay, so yeah, I heard a couple of things there. One is that part of it is just your own comfort level with whatever that issue is, and John's dealing with people in tax situations, and obviously some people are more aggressive than others, and being respectful of that and you're working with them is an important part. But there is also, the other thing I heard is there's a lot of creativity that is available to us in situations where we feel like we're being given rules. And I was hearing that here as well, that there are other ways that you can serve your clients that don't circumvent the rules, but that incorporate the rules but still produce a result and a good relationship there. Very good. Any others? Yes, Bill.
One thing that we were talking about here, we had the same distinction between regulated industries and not regulated industries. And it just occurred to me after hearing John and Thad that in order to be creative, if you're in a regulated industry, in order to be creative with that client, you really have to know the regulations well. You have to know really where the bright lines are because that'll set the parameters. Otherwise, if you're in an area that's a gray area, you're not going to be as creative, or you may be overly aggressive.
Okay, very good. Anne?
Well, we agreed that ethics and integrity are key to everything that one does. And I would add to that that maybe asking the question, is it better to do things right or to do the right things?
Oh, very good. Very good. Good question. Others? Any others? Okay, well, oh, I'm sorry, Bill. Yeah. Wait a minute.
Rules are a real balancing act in my business because I own a franchise. So you have a home office that has a proven method for doing things. It doesn't necessarily always equate to managing costs or making money. And to be honest with you, if I told my franchise coordinator I was at this meeting, he would frown when I tell him where it was located because we're supposed to be in our 3-mile market bubble.
Oh. Okay, good. Any others? All right, well, I'm going to let our panelists introduce themselves and share their thoughts on these questions. Cynthia?
I'm Cynthia Carell, and I looked at this question a little bit differently. It reminded me of when I was in art school, and I was trying to learn things, and I was trying to figure out what were the rules about art. But really, when you think about the creative process, it's about breaking the rules. In the early 1900s, Picasso came out with his first abstract Cubanism painting, and the world was shocked by it. But that led to modern art. At one point, there was no modern art museum. People who did abstract, artists who created abstract art, were considered mentally insane. So there's a fine line between, in the world of creativity, and sometimes breaking the rules can lead to that outside-the-box thinking and innovation, new design, lots of exciting things.
Very good.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What she said. My name is Kara Gamber, and I had a little bit of a different take on it as well because I focused more on how does it affect your relationships, or how does it work with your relationships, your business relationships, your personal relationships. So the key to me was relationships, and it was less about being right and more about the relationship. And so my thought was, in any good relationship, there's a level of respect that you have to have. And respect begs the question, who's more qualified? Who has more experience? So it's not about being right or wrong or about playing by the rules for me. It's about the blissful collaboration of strengths.
Good,
I like
very
that.
good, yeah.
Yeah, like she said. So I start off by thinking about context, different contexts for these kinds of questions, and you guys have already mentioned some of them.
There's always a cost to making the decision that we're going to play by my rules, right? Sometimes cost is worth it. But in the context of, let's say, rules of the game, baseball, football, whatever, you better play by the rules or you're going to get penalized or ejected. Rules of law, you better play by the rules or you're going to get penalized or ejected. But all of us sort of push the limit of that, right? How many of us have rolled through a stop sign without stopping? Come on, be honest. See, you're breaking the rules, but you decided, well, you know what? There's an advantage there. I'm in a hurry. Nobody's going to catch me, all of these kinds of things. So we sort of fudge the rules, right? So there's always these choices to make. Where we get into personal relationships, to Kara's point, personal rules is where we really have lots of choices. When those rules that I have don't jive with the rules that you have, then we're faced with a very difficult choice. What's more important? Is it the relationship or is it sticking to your guns? And for me, I have two sort of guiding golden rules. One is relationship over ego. Relationship over ego. And the second one is always treat people as a source of the solution and not the cause of the problem. Even if they are the cause of the problem, right? Because if you don't do that, eventually you may be playing by your own rules, but you'll be playing it alone.
Very good, very good. I'm going to swing around here because Lisa's been gracious enough to offer to help me here. But in thinking about these questions, and from my take, that I actually came up with 3 different things. 2 of them are resources that I want to suggest to you, and the third is my take on the topic. But the first one I want to share, first resource I want to share with you is a book entitled Leading Quietly by Joseph Badaracco Jr. And this goes to the discussion that you had at the table there, Thad, where there are numerous examples in here of middle management people who have no input into the rules and are facing ethical dilemmas as a result of the rules that exist there and how they contend with them. So he lays out a process when you're in a situation like that that's very helpful in terms of dealing with those kinds of issues. So highly recommended. Leading Quietly by Joseph Badaracco Jr. For those of you who are disruptive, who feel like you're disruptive in your industries, I'm going to suggest this book, Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky. Saul Alinsky was an activist, and in here he says that if you really want to be effective in gaining action in the direction that you'd like to see things go, there are rules that are going to help you do that. So again, I highly suggest that book to you. It's Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky. And then as I was thinking about these questions from a personal standpoint, one of the things that I realized that somewhat implicit in the question of whose rules is a question of control. Who's in control of the situation? And I'm not sure that's the right question. I'm wondering if the question shouldn't be alignment. Is there alignment here? Because if there's significant alignment in values and interests between the parties involved, then we're not playing by his rules or my rules or her rules or my rules. We're playing by our rules because that alignment already exists and the rules are the same for all. If there isn't sufficient alignment, then the question becomes, do we play at all? Because if that isn't sufficient alignment, the likelihood of success is very, very small. And the odds are you're better off just agreeing not to play at all. Okay? Any other thoughts, comments, questions? Yes, Andy.
One of the things that has been helpful for me is to, rather than looking at right or wrong, reframe that in being, is it useful, and what is the most useful, and what's less useful? And that gives a whole different measuring
Right.
tool for how to make the optimal decision in the situation.
Great. Tom?
And another way to think of usefulness is what is the underlying principle behind the rule? And this gets to Dale's point. If, a lot of times the rules under which we operate feel arbitrary to us until we ask, what's the point of the rule? And if we're able to answer that, we're getting to that place where the people participating can reach alignment, because alignment is really agreement on the underlying principle. And at that point, the arbitrariness or the oppressiveness of rules begins to fade away, and you're able to work in concert.
Great. Both good comments. Thank you. And John?
One book that is a follow-up on what Tom was just saying, I found very interesting. It's titled First, Break All the Rules.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, I just got notice that we're out of time here, so let's give a round of applause to our panelists and to yourselves. This was a great job, folks. Thank you.